Welcome to Watch the Bookerman and to the Big Bang, WCW's first show since being bought out by Shane McMahon. It's going to be a really great show. We've got a lot of debuts, some surprises, and hopefully a really good show. Now, I'm not going to pretend we've got the perfect roster, but there is no space for anybody to have the night off tonight. Happy to accept that automatic choice. From what I remember, this is a venue that has a real big history with WCW, and given that we are based in the Mid-Atlantic region, I'm more than happy for our first show to take place in such a historic venue. The broadcasters, I'm just going to automatically select. I think the game knows better than me what pay-per-view providers to select. We will do our first ever booking team meeting. I'm interested to see how these play out. So we've got a little bit of creativity. Might just take me a little bit of time to get used to this stuff properly, but 108, so we will spend it on, we'll get a creative finish, which is a safe bet with no restrictions. I'm happy with that. And we'll have an angle idea. Oh, maybe not then. Oh, we only have 18 left. So we've got one creative finish. Oh, right, so we've used some of our creative energy just to book the show. So yeah, we've got a creative finish that we should use. I'll use that on the main event if it's a safe bet. Let's see what locker room instance we've had. Stacey Keebler's given us an angle idea. I didn't actually have anything planned for tonight, so yeah, well done, Stacey. You might actually get used. Billy Kidman also, I'll be using that as well. Fit Finley ran pre-show training drills for the men, and 17 people attended, so that's good to see. Diamond Dallas Page, who is one of our locker room leaders, he brightened it up. So all positive news so far. A great rib from Jimmy Yang on Evan Courageous. The Sandman, before even debuting, has pulled a classic rib on Booker T, so big balls from the Sandman, it has to be said. We do have an argument between Arn Anderson and Mike Awesome. We are going to use this time to inspire our roster. It's the only real one you can use for a first show as big as this. Everybody's fired up and buzzing with anticipation, as am I. Now, we've sold the pay-per-view here on nothing being pre-booked, but hopefully when we go to this next screen and I've got everything in, you will see that we have put together, for what we have, a limited roster, a pretty good card, and hopefully the perfect first step on the rebuild of WCW. So let's get into it. And the Big Bang begins with a dark match between two guys who were on the show. Only 4 people weren't on the card, 2 for a very good reason. The other 2 were Devon Storm, who we've brought back, not renamed as Crowbar yet. Not quite sure which name we're going to go with, and he defeats Jamie Noble in 7 minutes and 54 with the sit-out Gourd Buster. Middle of the road performances from both men, but we do see on screen that Devon Storm debuts a high pain tolerance gimmick. I didn't really know how to word the gimmick that I want for him, so we'll just stick it with that for a while, and it says it's very good, so no complaints there. But we are also shown on screen, albeit they wouldn't have actually been there for a dark match, Mike Tenay, the Professor, debuts Jerry the King Lawler and Don Cyrus Callis. So that is our commentary team for the new WCW. Perhaps not the best way to introduce them, but Mike Tenay gets a poor rating for his gimmick, which I don't really think matters. Jerry Lawler, who will be used in some angles and potentially matches going forward, gets a great rating, so I'm happy with that. And likewise, Don Callis, smug intellectual is all I could think to name his gimmick, and that gets an adequate rating, so we're not too fussed about that. It's then, of course, time for the actual pay-per-view to begin in front of, I think, a sold-out Greensboro Coliseum, 23,500 people exactly, as Shane McMahon opens WCW Big Bang. Now, I've not booked many shows on TW9 yet. I really don't like the fact that you can't control, or I haven't worked out how to control, which order it shows people in. So, for example, in this segment, we've got Shane McMahon and Booker T both on screen, but I'd booked it so that Shane McMahon comes out first and then Booker T next. In the previous game, I used to cover it up and then I'd be able to show who was on screen when they were on screen, with the fact that also off-screen people are shown on the angle page as well now. It's just basically pointless, so I'm just going to go through it as I do, and if there's any major surprises, then at that point I might actually cover things up. But basically, the way the game has been made this time, it doesn't really serve for me to be able to do stuff like that, and it was effort anyway, so I'm not going to complain too much. But Shane McMahon comes down to the ring, opening WCW Big Bang. He's promoting the creation of a new WCW, exactly what you'd expect from him. The name is the same, some of the faces will be familiar, but everything in his WCW will be different. They have learned from the mistakes of WCW past, and he's learned from a lot of his father's mistakes too. He has final say on all decisions, and from tonight, every person in the locker room starts on an equal footing. This is just us trying to dispel any concerns that this is the same old WCW. Don't know if you heard the siren in the background there, but that is not Scott Steiner coming out to interrupt him. Instead, it is Booker T who he brings out, the man who stands above all others, the only person who's not on an equal footing, because he is our United States and World Heavyweight Champion. Booker T comes down to the ring and he is informed that he will defend the World Heavyweight Championship tonight with a Battle Royal set to open the show to determine the #1 contender. They do, however, have another title to address. Booker says that he has no issue defending both titles tonight, but Shane has slightly other ideas. He doesn't want to see such a historic, prestigious title relegated to a secondary focus, and that's why he has made the decision tonight to vacate the United States Championship. We've put that in the road agent notes. It does change hands from Booker T to nobody. Tonight, 4 matches will take place in the opening round of the United States Championship tournament, with 4 winners continuing to the semi-finals at a future date, yet to be confirmed. This brings Shane McMahon to his final announcement for later in the night, but first there is that Battle Royal. Booker T then reluctantly hands over the United States Championship, accepting a handshake from Shane McMahon before heading to the back. The WCW United States title is officially vacated. Now, with this angle, it was partly about dispelling any concerns about what this company might be, but also setting up kind of a reason for a lot of the matches on the card. Part of me wanted to just put on maybe 7 matches of the best we could do, but the roster really is so poor that I kind of felt that my only choice was to basically take the people on the winning side as the people I want to spotlight, and the people on the losing side, you'll kind of see throughout the night that it's not the strongest roster that we have at the minute. I've obviously explained that previously, but we've obviously sold the pay-per-view just on the name of WCW coming back, and hopefully we've given at least 6 of the matches on tonight's card a reason to exist, and the other ones that we'll see hopefully also have enough interest that it doesn't just feel like a completely thrown together card. But I thought starting a tournament on the Big Bang would be a way so that at least these random matches have stakes and do actually matter, as well as, of course, a Battle Royal to open the show, which, as you'll see, it's not quite as star-studded as you might expect a World Heavyweight Championship #1 contendership match to be. Bob Sapp, Buff Bagwell, Diamond Dallas Page, Jason Jett, Johnny the Bull, Kwee Wee, Lash LaRue, Mike Sanders, Reno, and the debuting Steve Corino, who is the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, so he could potentially go on to be in a title v title match in the main event, and we do want to give him a good showing in this match. That's why he is one of the final 4, but Kwee Wee and Lash LaRue, then Mike Sanders, Reno, Johnny the Bull, and Jason Jett. The order of elimination was kind of me going where I see these people on a totem pole. Kwee Wee and Lash LaRue are pretty much bottom of the bottom. Mike Sanders, again, I don't have too much interest in. Reno and Johnny the Bull, I do think they have potential, but they're not standing out to me. Jason Jett, I think, I've got a storyline idea for him, certainly, but Steve Corino, of course, has to be presented better with it being his debut. Buff Bagwell tries to form a team with Bob Sapp, but that kind of backfires quickly. But when it comes down to Buff Bagwell and Diamond Dallas Page, the 2 most over guys in the match, for me, there was nobody else who could ever win this. It's only 10 minutes because I didn't want it to be sort of a 15-minute match when really there's only probably 1, maybe 2 people who can win this match. So that's all it was. It was a showcase of Diamond Dallas Page. He picks up the majority of the eliminations, and that's going to be the theme throughout tonight's show. I'm not trying to present that these are amazing matches that we're putting on. This was essentially who was left unbooked on the show, who we could throw in there. But it's a showcase of Diamond Dallas Page, and I'm sure there would have been a big pop when he threw Buff Bagwell out of the ring. The World Heavyweight Championship storyline advances with a 49 rated segment, so a bit of concern for the storyline heat going into the main event. Buff Bagwell penalised due to being in extremely poor form. I guess there's not too much we can do about that other than hope that he can work his way out of it, and Reno also seemed off his game. Diamond Dallas Page celebrates victory in the first match of the new WCW, ignoring that dark show, of course, and he dominated the field throughout. We really are putting over that this guy is a main event star, and the other guys in there probably wasn't. His night's work, of course, is far from over as the commentators promote the main event of Big Bang, Diamond Dallas Page versus Booker T, the biggest match we can possibly put on, and we're putting that on in the first ever show. We follow this up with an interview in the back, and as you can see there, we've got Lance Storm, Mike Awesome, Diamond Dallas Page all showing their pictures. Those guys aren't on screen, however, so it's only whoever I say is on screen who's on screen. It might be a little bit confusing at times and not what we used to, but Booker T is interviewed in the back. He is asked by Scott Hudson for his feelings on facing Diamond Dallas Page tonight. Now, I've seen that this segment it gets a 75 rating, but it doesn't forward the storyline. So I am just going to quickly go back after I've talked through this segment and just see what I've done wrong there. Maybe I've not put Diamond Dallas Page in the storyline or something. Anyway, Booker T says that having watched that match, there was only ever going to be one winner, and he's putting over DDP head and shoulders above the rest. I'm surprised we didn't get that note, to be fair. Asked about the United States Heavyweight Championship tournament, he's a little bit unhappy that the tournament's taking place, I suppose, but he says that he worked just as hard to win that title as he did the World Heavyweight Championship on March 26th, and he expects to see the same fight from those challengers tonight. He says while it'll be difficult to look past Lance Storm and Mike Awesome, he's sure that they're going to have each other's backs. He hears that there's a surprise entrant in this tournament who may well blow the whole thing wide open, and we're putting that man over as he makes his debut. Sorry, I forgot we have a second match in here. I was going straight into the tournament there. We have Super Crazy and Yoshihiro Tajiri also debuting. Super Crazy's gimmick unfortunately getting a port, while Tajiri's only adequate. But given that they're starting at the bottom of the card, I think we'll be okay with that. They do, however, pick up the win over 3 established cruiserweight tag teams. While we don't technically have a cruiserweight tag team title anymore because Rey Mysterio is not here, and I didn't want to start with the titles being vacated, having basically only just been formed, but it's something that we are going to look to build towards in the future. Perhaps when we get, I know this is looking beyond us even getting a TV show, but if we get a B show, I'd like to see that, where we can have a title like the Cruiserweight Tag Team Championships that can be defended on that B show, and just basically what the Cruiserweight division always was, go out there and put on some good matches. Now, this was actually a poor match described by the game, but Super Crazy and Yoshihiro Tajiri defeat the Young Dragons, Jimmy Yang and Kaz Hayashi. 3 count, Evan Courageous and Shannon Moore, and Romeo and Skipper. I do like all these 3 teams, to be fair, in one way or another, but I just felt bringing in some new guys, fresh faces, that's what it's all about. There's not that many new signings debuting tonight. At least we had 1 or 2 in the first match and a couple in this one too. The crowd were turned off by having a match outside the pre-show between workers they don't have any investment in. I knew that these were all classes unimportant, but to me 42 is fine. We'll look at the performances actually. Tajiri, you see a lot of work needs to be done with him. Super Crazy though, I think the man of the match, so he's definitely been a good signing there. But Yoshihiro Tajiri, also somebody who we see a lot of potential in. They stand tall in the ring. 2 guys who were rumoured to be signing with WCW back in 2001, but obviously the company went out of business, and I think there was actually some backstage stuff. I've been reading Wrestling Observer rewinds on Reddit from 2001. I'll link them actually in the description of this video because they're well worth reading. Such an interesting time in wrestling history, and obviously there's such a great archive of them. But the 2 former rivals, and the commentators of course put that over during their debut. Basically it's one of them where these guys show and not tell what they're all about. Super Crazy and Tajiri, if it is your introduction to them, I think they would have been 2 great guys to see working together. The commentators also take this time to promote that the former Cruiserweight Tag Team Champion Billy Kidman was forced to vacate those titles due to his partner being unavailable. Tonight, Billy Kidman will challenge for the Cruiserweight Championship against Shane Helms, and there is an added stipulation to this match because Billy Kidman has decided that if he loses tonight's match, he will leave the Cruiserweight division for good, and that's why we're saving the Cruiserweight Championship match for our semi-main event, because there is a pretty big stipulation added to that. We then get an interview with Diamond Dallas Page. He's had time to recover from his win in the Battle Royal, and he says that he is ready to fight in the main event. It's great to be part of the new WCW, and he can see that there is already going to be some great new talents on display in Shane McMahon's vision of the company. However, sometimes it's best to stick with what you know, and DDP knows about winning World Heavyweight Championships. As DDP continues, Shane McMahon walks into shot, offering a handshake to the former WCW champion and an absolute icon of the company. And we're putting over here that Shane, while he wants to stamp his own authority, there is no doubt he has respect for the history of this company, and introduced himself to a former 3-time champion. He looks forward to the role that DDP can play in his WCW. Now, it doesn't get quite as good of a rating as some of the segments from earlier, but this time it does advance the WCW World Heavyweight Championship storyline, so I'm not sure. Yeah, I didn't actually go back to the booking screen when I said I would, but I will do now, and we'll see what's going on with that just to make sure it doesn't affect any of our later segments. Yeah, so I'm not sure. The guys who were supposed to be in that match were in that match, but we go into the United States Heavyweight Championship tournament, and you can see the biggest debut, the most obvious signing that you could ever do. It had good wrestling and decent crowd reaction as Rob Van Dam defeats Chavo Guerrero in 10 minutes and 28 with a frog splash. Now, like I've said in the previous video, I do see potential for Chavo in this company going forward and putting him in the United States Championship tournament rather than back in the Cruiserweight division. That's our way of saying that Chavo has moved up the totem pole, not to put down the Cruiserweight division, but obviously there is somewhat of a hierarchy in the company. The match was designed to steal the show because, to me, more important than anything on tonight's show, I'd say Rob Van Dam being put over as a serious threat was the most important thing, and this match, a 79 rating. I'd be unsurprised if that's not the best match on the night, and he gets a very good performance with a 76 on his debut. That's before we've had a chance to build him any momentum, and that's before we've managed to get him over as part of WCW, so the sky's the limit for Rob Van Dam, but we all knew that it's a very, very dark situation for WCW and this roster, but Rob Van Dam can definitely be a bright spot and a fresh face who picks up a win going into the Final Four of the United States Championship Tournament. Also happy to see that he gets a great rating for his whole effing show gimmick. He then stands tall. The commentator's putting over yet another impressive debut, and throughout the match we're talking about and putting over how innovative Rob Van Dam is. That's not just because it's factual and that we want to put him over, but it also plays into something that we've got a little bit later, and basically the first thing, or the first storyline that we're going to see Rob Van Dam go into. Speaking of which, actually, this is what it is. The commentators are talking about what we've got planned for the rest of the tournament. I did think I'd put this later on, to be fair, but we see Kanyon is holding Scott Hudson by the scruff of his neck in the interview area, and he's basically taking him at hostage and is saying, I want an interview right now, and the cameras or the director decides, well, let's see what Kanyon has to say. He appears to have taken exception to the over-the-top praise in his mind that was received by Rob Van Dam. I've even put earlier there, so I think I definitely meant to put this after the second match in the tournament, but it doesn't matter. He says that he's going to prove exactly what being an innovator is all about tonight. That's, of course, been a reputation that Kanyon had throughout his career. While he wasn't scheduled to be interviewed, he demands that Scott asks him about his match with Hugh Morrus tonight. Kanyon says that nobody will be laughing, especially not the laughing man, Hugh Morrus, because he is going to beat his ass. Now, it's not a very good segment, but it's a way, I think, that semi-organically starts a tension between Rob Van Dam and Kanyon. Can be difficult sometimes when somebody comes fresh into the company to start a storyline without them just being post-match attacked or something. So I think this will do a good job of getting us where we need to go and set up an interesting dynamic should they both make the next round of the tournament. David Flair then makes his entrance for the match, as the commentators put over that as well as being Ric Flair's son, he himself is actually a former United States champion, and that's why he got a place in the tournament, because let's face it, David Flair getting a match in this tournament kind of seems out of place, but he did hold the title into 1998, I think it was, or 99, so there is some justification there, but he is jumped from behind by Mike Awesome. For reasons we'll see in a minute, he lays him out on the entranceway and then enters the ring. It appears that David may not be able to compete. He shouts that Flair doesn't belong in this tournament. The commentators do put over that fact he is a former champion. He is not going to stand down, and he sort of staggers his way to the ring. He's not 100%. I think that's something you kind of have to do with David Flair. He looks like this Nepo child, so we want to at least try and put over that he does have some fight in him. But the real reason I had the pre-match attack is because I wanted Mike Awesome to beat him in 2 minutes. An awesome bomb, straightforward squash, no doubt about it, and we want Mike Awesome to look like a killer because that's what they started doing in 2001, and he's definitely somebody with a huge amount of potential on this roster in my opinion. Someone who went to WWE and didn't reach those heights, and that's always the slightly more interesting people to book to me, not necessarily the people who we know were always going to go on to big things, but people who, like Sean O'Haire and Chuck Palumbo, we'll see later, seem to have that potential but didn't quite make it. And after the match, he seems angered that David Flair refused to just lay down and give up, so Mike Awesome continues to lay into his previous opponent. He throws Flair to the outside, setting up a table and powerbombing him through it. Unfortunately, security aren't quick enough to get down to the ring, but EMTs are then quickly on the scene. Mike Awesome backs up the ramp. He has sent a message to David Flair and to perhaps the entire WCW roster. That's our first semi-final set. On whatever the next show in WCW history is, it'll be Rob Van Dam versus Mike Awesome, and I personally think that'd be an incredible match to see. We then get our World Tag Team Championships match, and this is kind of evidence that we've got a pretty poor tag team division. We've stuck Shawn Stasiak and Mark Jindrak back together. We've named them the Peaks of Perfection just so they seem like a real tag team basically when they're not. But we kept this match short, 7 minutes and 24. We also set the road agent note as Wild Brawl, so we just want it to be bell rings, fight, and hopefully some physical action between these two guys. And again, it's about who we're showcasing tonight. Match 1 showcasing Diamond Dallas Page, match 2 showcasing Tajiri and S Crazy, match 3 showcasing Rob Van Dam, match 4 showcasing Mike Awesome, and this match is showcasing the Natural Born Thrillers, the super kick from Chuck Palumbo, the Sean Torn Bomb from Sean O'Haire, and if nothing else, it's not a great match, we know, but it is 2 decent performances from our tag team champions and spotlighting the right people. If you look on the right side of the match card at the end of the people who've been defeated, you can see where our problems lie in terms of the strength and depth in this roster, but if you look on the left hand side, you get a pretty good idea of who it is that I like in this company and see potential to build around. We then get Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Haire standing tall, and whether it was the best quality or not, we're at least showing that there is that variety in WCW, and it's not just going to be based around the cruiserweights and the smaller guys. The commentators are intrigued as to what new challenge awaits the champions in the near future. That is going to be a big job for Shane McMahon in terms of rebuilding this tag team division. Appearing on the apron, a woman recognised by Cyrus as the Queen of Extreme, Francine. She quickly gains the attention of the two men. They nod, happy with the seeming interest in them of the WCW newcomer. Jerry Lawler shares their enthusiasm and has a lot of very, very complimentary things to say about Francine, but the idea here is that there is that intrigue. Why is the Queen of Extreme here? Thankfully, she gets a great rating for a gimmick. The Natural Born Thrillers storyline has actually gained heat with that, which is good to see, but essentially it's a placeholder storyline for the tag team champions before we go into what's next for them. Shane McMahon then speaks with Scott Hudson about the show so far, putting over the action that he's seen on the night, but also condemning the actions, not of David Flair, of Mike Awesome. Imagine if he just came out and slagged off David Flair for getting battered. That would be quite strange from Shane, but he's actually talking about Mike Awesome's actions. Apologies. He also addresses Kanyon's words from earlier, telling him that he's got the same chance as Rob Van Dam to oppress him tonight. If he was listening in the opening segment, he'd know that Rob Van Dam, Kanyon start on the same footing. They're both in the tournament, and he expects really, really big things after the words of Chris Kanyon. Shane speaks about his announcement that is coming later in the show when Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Haire have made their way back through the curtain. Shane McMahon shouts out "good work, champs" to the pair of them. There is then a mutual respect between the three men before we head to ringside, and I think that's another dynamic that we're going to try and develop. Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Haire, from what I saw, they just had a bit of a cool air about them. They were trying to give him gimmicks that I didn't quite think fit him. Sean O'Haire was this bad apple and he was trying to be intense and psychotic, but I just think they seemed like sort of jacked up, laid back guys. So we're going to try and develop some kind of rapport, and hopefully just a little bit of interaction with Shane McMahon, and what I've got planned over the next few months will show that. Hopefully we'll get an interesting dynamic for the Natural Born Thrillers. We then get Fit Finlay coming out of retirement, I suppose, for his final run, but it doesn't really go as he'd hoped because Lance Storm defeats him in 7 minutes. And this is again just showing the variety that we have on the roster. A bit of technical wrestling here, some hard-hitting brawling from Fit Finlay, but ultimately Lance Storm can injure the back of Fit Finlay, which we put over as a problem for him, and eventually with a single leg Boston Crab, Fit Finlay has no choice but to tap out, and that is only 7 minutes and 23, so Fit Finlay's not going to be a full-time member of the roster. That's why I was happy to give a dominant, decisive win to Lance Storm over him, but he is somebody with enough legitimacy that I think it kind of feels like Lance Storm has done something impressive, or I certainly hope so, and if that wasn't enough, then Lance Storm stands tall. He has his arms behind his back before the referee eventually raises one of them. Mike Awesome, his partner in Team Canada, comes out and joins Lance Storm. The injured Fit Finlay is checked on by EMTs. We had concerns coming into the match about whether Fit Finlay could make a comeback, and it looks like just as he was ready to do that, things have gone pretty badly for him. This manages to catch the attention of Mike Awesome. He seems to smell the weakness, and he looks to Lance Storm, who remains stoic, but gives a slight nod to Mike, which signals that he's going to attack him. Already struggling with his back, things are made even worse, and he too is thrown to the outside. Awesome then sets up a table, puts Finlay through it with another Awesome bomb, and while this happens, Storm remains completely unmoved in the ring. He's almost ignoring what's going on, staring straight in front of him with his arms behind his back. Finlay is down and out, and the commentators are putting over that Awesome's attack on Flair was bad enough earlier, but that's somebody who's at the beginning of his career, a young guy who can probably come back from this. This attack may well have ended the career of Fit Finlay just as his comeback was beginning. And what the segments involving these guys has been about tonight is putting over Mike Awesome as this ruthless killer, but Lance Storm is very cold and very calculated and just as twisted in his own way. It's actually a decent segment, happy with that, advancing our storyline. And I don't know if I actually put the note in there, yeah, but despite being in action next, Hugh Morrus does come and check on Fit Finlay, and we put over that there is a mutual respect between those two guys as two of the senior leadership figures in the locker room. We then go into, unfortunately, not that good of a match due to the two men not clicking. It's still okay, and Kanyon puts in a decent 60 performance, but the story of this match is essentially that Kanyon is better than Hugh Morrus. I'm a lot higher on Kanyon than I am on Hugh Morrus, but Kanyon is so caught up, and that's the specific story that we're telling. He's so caught up in trying to be the innovator that when he hits the flatliner and seems to have the match won, he decides to go up to the top rope and he does the Rob Van Dam pose. He's trying to make sure that even the fans, the locker room, Shane himself knows that he can do anything that Rob Van Dam can do. But this is a very, very stupid decision as Hugh Morrus gets back up, hits him with a powerbomb from the top rope, and then goes to the top rope and hits a moonsault. So as I said in the opening video, I am no fan of Hugh Morrus, but for the storyline we have in mind for Chris Kanyon, and because we wanted two faces and two heels in the semi-finals of the United States Championship Tournament, Hugh Morrus does pick up what may be one of his last wins in WCW. That's probably not fair because he is actually, in terms of our roster, a solid mid-card guy. The win here tonight, I think, doesn't hurt Kanyon too much with what we have planned for him going forward. Hugh Morrus celebrates his win. He will face Lance Storm, while Mike Awesome will face Rob Van Dam at a future date. After Hugh's celebrations, Kanyon throws a strop in the ring, furious that his own desire to prove himself ultimately cost him what appeared to be a win that he had in the bag. Kanyon hopefully reflecting on this and will come back better in the future. Speaking of Mike Awesome and Lance Storm, we get a quick segment in the back where Shane McMahon speaks with the two men, chastising them for their actions earlier, before, during and after their tournament matches. Shane says that if he sees a repeat of any of this in their future tournament matches, there will be consequences. Lance asks Shane when that next round will take place, since he's already talking about it, but Shane says that they'll find out when everybody else finds out. Thankfully though, that will be very soon. Lance Storm doing well off script, Shane McMahon unfortunately not so, but there we go, advancing the storyline throughout the night. We then get a video package which rates quite poorly, to be fair, and it is looking back at the history of the Cruiserweight division with particular focus on the current champion Sugar Shane Helms and Billy Kidman, who has held the title more than anybody on the current WCW roster. On March 26, 2001, Billy Kidman and his partner became the second ever Cruiserweight Tag Team Champions, but due to them having to vacate those titles but having never lost them, Kidman has been given a Cruiserweight Championship opportunity, kind of as a make good to him. However, adding his own stakes to the upcoming match, Billy has stated that if he doesn't become a 4-time Cruiserweight champion tonight, he will never challenge for the title again. So not that good of a storyline rating. We did another high spots match, but not going all out, so maybe they would have done better if we'd have given them the chance to go all out. It's 11 minutes and 46, so again, one of the longer matches on the show. Billy Kidman goes for the unprettier, or whatever he called it, the Kid Crusher, only for it to be reversed by Sugar Shane into a vertebraker, and hopefully these two can have a good match. Lots of impressive high spot sequences, but legitimising Sugar Shane here, beating a Cruiserweight legend and making defense number 1 of the World Cruiserweight Championship. Sugar Shane has his arm raised following the victory, with Billy Kidman eventually returning to his feet, albeit in a pretty bad way. He looks sad to have lost the match, but shows a great deal of respect to Sugar Shane, offering a handshake before raising his arm as Shane raises the Cruiserweight title in his other arm, and that's really us saying that this is a passing the torch moment. This is the face of the division, or certainly while he has the championship he will be, and he's somebody we are going to sort of build the division around, representing the future of it, and other people who we bring in will kind of have to prove themselves against this champion. Billy Kidman is of course now officially a figure of the past of the Cruiserweight division, and we wonder what is next for him. As Billy Kidman leaves looking pretty dejected, Tori Wilson, who we thought was his ex-girlfriend, but it appears they've reconciled the differences because she gives Billy a hug and leads him to the back. Shane McMahon's music then hits as Sugar Shane is sort of slapping hands with the fans and doing his championship duties post-match. Shane on the ramp does have a word in the ear of Sugar Shane, putting him over. Shane should refer to these guys by surname. Helms looks happy with whatever Shane said as the WCW owner comes to the ring to make his announcement, and there's a lot of people on screen again, but it is supposed to just be about Shane McMahon. Both storylines gaining heat with a 66 rating. That tells me there's not that much heat on either of these matches, but Shane takes a microphone, he puts over the events of the night so far, then turns his attention to his major announcement, and it's kind of what we would have all expected. This save doesn't really work without this. Shane McMahon announces the return of WCW to television as Nitro comes to Wednesday nights on the USA Network. That debut episode will feature the finals and the semi-finals of the United States Championship Tournament, as well as an appearance from whoever wins tonight's main event. So a little bit vague there because DDP and Booker T will both be on that show. Shane McMahon says that just like tonight, we can expect both familiar faces and new faces, and he can't wait to share with the fans what he has planned for World Championship Wrestling. How better to cap off tonight's Big Bang than with a huge World Heavyweight Championship match, and there are no two bigger names in this company, two of the biggest names in the business, full stop. And it'll be Booker T versus Diamond Dallas Page in our main event, and it's a 64, which is bad. I'm hoping that some of our segments can at least give this a lift. I want to see what was wrong with it, basically, so I can see what we can do again. So Diamond Dallas Page held back. I did just do storytelling, so maybe I should have put something more in there. I do think I put All Out in there, or asked them to go All Out, but I think storytelling does negate that a little bit. What other negatives did we have? I didn't see. Low heat to the storyline is fair enough. The commentators aren't very used to each other, and it was face. I did forget about that, so there's plenty of reasons why this wasn't a good match, but I'd have hoped that the two men would have at least put a bit more effort in. You get 73 on the crowd rating and the wrestler rating, and the crowd are very hot, so we've not turned the fans off in any way, so that's good to see. This might just seem like a boring way to end the show. Fantastic heat and great wrestling. Booker T defeats Diamond Dallas Page in 13 minutes and 58 with a scissors kick. It's basically that. There's not much more I can say to it. It's just a clean, fair match, and arguably that's exactly what it needed to be. I think if we'd have started anything with a major storyline thing, with a turn or anything like that, it would have just been, oh, so it's the same WCW betrayals and all these other things are just the main focus of it. And that's something where I've watched WCW 2001, so there are things that I definitely want to avoid. Everybody was betraying each other. There was one pay-per-view, I think, where basically the whole theme of the storyline was that everybody on the pay-per-view had been turned on by their opponent. So, you know, it's at least a clean finish, albeit not that great of a match rating. Booker T with a 78 is encouraging. Diamond Dallas Page with only a 68 is a little bit concerning, I will admit. That's our main event, a clean finish. I was going to have Shane come out and raise Booker T's hand at the end of this match, but I actually thought, you know, we've seen enough of Shane tonight and we don't want him to come across as this egomaniac who wants to be front and center all the time. So Booker T stands tall, raising the World Heavyweight Championship. This is the face of the new WCW. It's not about the egos and it's not about the big names. It's about Booker T, a huge star and a 4-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion. But also, we do pay tribute to the performance of Diamond Dallas Page. Mike Tenay, Jerry the King Lawler, and Cyrus the Virus sign off on the Big Bang, saying that tonight was the beginning of everything new in this WCW universe. Coming on June 27th, a new World Championship Wrestling is forming as WCW Nitro debuts on the USA Network. I did check, obviously, that we could get a deal on the USA Network and that we'd be able to get the slot and everything. If anything changes between now and then, this first show kind of looks a bit daft, but I'm pretty confident that we'll be okay in that respect. A 70 is not actually too bad. If it would have been a 69, I'd have been disappointed, and 70 I'm happy with. So that shows you how minute the rating differences can make me feel, but a 70 feels like a solid start, whereas something in the 60s would have really felt pretty bad. I don't really have too much to say. I think I'm going to say that Booker put in a good performance. Rob Van Dam, I'll say great performance. And who else did well? I think Lance Storm may have been the other one with a good performance. We'll put him out as a good example, actually, because, yeah, just because. Yeah, so hopefully the three men pleased, not too bothered. Injury review, thankfully we didn't get any injuries. We made a shit ton of money, actually. 2.7 million on pay-per-view revenue and over half a million on ticket sales, merchandise as well, and our workers only cost us 84. So money's not going to be an issue in this. Making $3 million on a show is absolutely insane, to be fair. Popularity wise, we have gone down in 2 regions, so not getting any closer to our goals, but Canada and Australia gained something, as did Puerto Rico and Hawaii. So yeah, not all bad, but we know that we're going to have to do better for the future shows. I'm not going to do the media scrum, to be fair. Ooh, that's a bit of a shocker. on the fallout to... I mean, I didn't have any intention of bringing him in, and I don't think he really did much in his career after 2001, but, well, obviously he's done AEW, completely forgot about that run, and obviously he's sorted his life out in reality, it seems. But yeah, there's, well, the first massive shift in the timeline, I suppose. Randy Savage is retiring, Jake Roberts has passed away, Bob Sapp moves on. We just brought him in so we had a big guy in the Battle Royal where it would seem it's impossible to throw this guy out, and then obviously eventually the guy does get thrown out because we wanted Diamond Dallas Page to win it. But yeah, that's all the news that we've seen there, and Bob Sapp's gone from the company, as we said. La Parka is now a comedy wrestler. The Big Bang has become dormant. That's fair enough because it was only supposed to be a one-time thing. Nearly 2 million people bought that pay-per-view. Now, I don't even know if there's ever been a pay-per-view in real life, or certainly around this time, that had been bought that much. But, well done us, breaking records already. Really good job. And there we see the 3 people who weren't used. I forgot about Pete Gas. I forgot I'd signed him, for fuck's sake. Tommy Dreamer and Hardcore Hack, though, very much on their way to debuting in the future, but we didn't want to just use them in a throwaway thing. We have a big debut planned for them, and when we get to Nitro, that will be something that you see. But I'm just going to process through now to the point where I want to make the pay-per-view. Again, I'll go through the pay-per-view schedule and make these pay-per-views dormant, and then we will get to the point where it is time to sign the deal and confirm that WCW Nitro is going back. So basically between the 28th of May 2001 and June the 21st, nothing noteworthy happened story-wise. In terms of any news that I saw, I've not actually made any new signings or anything, so there's very little to show you. The only thing that sort of stood out to me is TCW. They've signed quite a few interesting people. Kurt Hennig, Road Warrior Animal. The reason I noticed this, of course, is because they're all people who are on our shortlist. BG James. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys do in that company. And I do have interest in Dusty and Dustin Rhodes. So I don't even think Dustin's signed, but maybe eventually he will be. They are in trouble, and it made me think about the other companies that we could have agreements with. Again, reading The Observer, I know that Johnny Ace, who of course is a big part of our company right now, he was interested in, I think, either New Japan or Noah as partners for WCW. Now I'm wondering if it's a good idea to set up a talent sharing agreement with Noah. To begin with, there's probably not that many people on the roster that I'm interested in, but I just think maybe it could be something in long term, so it'd be interesting to know what people think about that, and whether also we should bring in some of these people on our shortlist. You've seen the Big Bang, so do you think that roster is really, really poor and needs that sort of short-term help? If you can bring in Kurt Hennig and get 3 months out of him before something goes wrong, or BG James likewise, a few other people like that. I'd be interested in, having actually seen a show from this new WCW, what you think. But now we are at the 21st, and the reason I've stopped here is because the following Wednesday will be, hopefully, the debut of WCW Nitro. So we will go to broadcasters, and it's going to be the USA Network. I've kind of looked through this. I'm going to filter actually on the networks that will negotiate with us. There's quite a lot, and I'll of course check based in USA to start with, and then I'll do the other ones probably off screen, to be fair. But the USA Network were willing to negotiate for us for WCW Nitro. Yeah, so they weren't willing to give us a 2-hour show, so basically I could work around that, I think, by setting it as 1.5 hours, then changing it back. But I think I'm just going to go with it and accept the limitations or the challenges. The USA Network don't want us to have that long of a show. They also don't want to give us that long of a deal and all this time slot. They're not willing at all. Late night, I think, is okay, and a 65 is a reasonable level for us to be expected to reach, and we should still get decent ratings, but I don't really think it's right for us to pay. So we'll go to 9 months, and that brings us to what, June through to about March next year. So basically a year from when the company dissolves. So that could be interesting. Our first show will actually be 3 months and a day since the last episode of Nitro, so we'll basically come out next year at a very, very similar time, and if we don't manage to keep things up, it could be again the last episode of WCW Nitro. But the reason I'm doing this date is because WWF at the time, had scheduled a WCW show for the 27th of June, so I thought it'd be interesting, with it being a Wednesday as well. I think that'd be an interesting way to start the show, actually trying to follow some real life stuff, as we've done with the Big Bang. We're again going to do that with what they had planned. Obviously, as time goes on, it's not going to be easy, but that also means that our second show will be on July the 4th, so I think that'd be a good time to have a TV special of Nitro, the Great American Bash, so where we're not having pay-per-views, we can then have special episodes of TV. I also think that Halloween 2001 falls on a Wednesday. Again, we can have a special TV episode rather than a pay-per-view. but they're all big shows leading to that eventual Starrcade pay-per-view when we return to pay-per-view before going into 2002 with a proper schedule. So that's a little bit of the thought process, but the most important thing is us agreeing a deal. We will be on TV again. I'll add any international deals we can get later, but to me it's just important to go back and see WCW Nitro in 6 days. I will make the Great American Bash dormant for the time being, and that does bring us to the end of this episode. I am just going to quickly pre-book the 2 matches that we know will take place on that debut episode. It's going to be Mike Awesome and Rob Van Dam in one semi-final of the United States Championship tournament, and it's going to be Lance Storm versus Hugh Morrus. Probably a little bit straightforward as to where the final's going to be, but hopefully you don't know who's going to win the United States Championship. And we also have time to sign people in this next 6 days, and I do feel like we maybe need 1 or 2 new names in the company for that big show. So I'd be interested if anybody wants to drop in the comments who they think would be the best pick as maybe the big surprise on the first show, or just an interesting character we can bring in. A few people stand out to me. He's in Noah, so maybe we could work on the relationship there and bring Vader in. I'm not quite sure, so I'll leave it there. Plenty of stuff to think about. We made $1.1 million last month as well, so things looking good in that regard. Pete Gas I also have to try and think of something for, but that is the end of the video, and I'll see you next time, hopefully. Cheers.